Hey guys, hope you're doing well. We are doing something a bit different than usual today. I'm out of town right now in Cancun, Mexico. My girlfriend's parents surprised us last minute with some amazing tickets down here. So today it's going to be a bit more casual. I got my cerveza, I got some student work going on, and if you have any just general Q&A, I'm here to hang out with you guys for a little bit. So that being the case, let me see if I can share a screen with y'all. And I wanted to show a few bits of work that I really enjoy. So let me go do that real quick. All right. Okay. So first up, we have Nati Ballesteros. And I believe she's actually from Mexico as well. She just posted this today. I think it's super cool. This is based off of the Tweaky project. So Houdini for the New Artist 2. If you don't know, I redid that whole thing recently with Tweaky. And this has basically all the different transformation effects and all the main bits and pieces of that tutorial. One thing I really love about this, by the way, is just the fact that she used her own models. You know, I don't know exactly what that statue is of. It's like this cool, you know, mythological creature looking thing. But you have that, some kind of moody medieval stones in the background. And, you know, it's just really cool looking, to tell you the truth. Yeah, I just kind of like how you do your own thing with that. I like the volumetrics at the top, how it kind of goes down halfway like that. And I don't know, it just goes to show, hey, if you're making your own projects, why not switch out the model, right? You could switch out the model, do some cool effects, make it your own. This kind of has an interesting, I don't know, kind of gothic feel to it. Which, you know, you don't always see the color pink with gothic stuff, so I kind of like that. It's kind of this like pink gothic look. Anyway, I thought that was super cool. We also have Low Bow VFX. And I'm not sure where he's from, but a while back he posted this really cool render from Pyro 2 that, yeah, just kind of shows the fire pit. Looks super cool. Thought I'd share that with you guys. And then lastly, we have Jacktone. Jacktone, a while back, did this really cool rendition from Vex Foundations 1. And, you know, I think one of the common things here is that, like, if you take whatever you find in the course, not just my course, but anyone's course, you go and you do your own thing, and you switch out the models, switch out the lightings, maybe add one or two little ingredients that's different, then you can really, really just take a tutorial to the next level. All it takes is just starting with a main idea and bouncing off of that a little bit, and that'll leave you in a cool spot. But anyway, I just wanted to show you guys some of that stuff. Yeah, it's, I don't know, it's cool to see what you guys come up with. Besides that, let me think what else. We got a bunch of cool new stuff coming up with CG Forge here soon. I got the node file I've been working on. It's basically like an encyclopedia of most commonly used nodes. That gets plugged into, you know, all the different courses. And, you know, it's kind of this like resource as you need it sort of thing. So I know I haven't really released a lot of new tutorials lately, but you know, it's kind of just building the foundations here for all future tutorials so that it's really useful. But anyway, yeah, you know, I just thought I'd go live, just kind of shooting off the cuff, which is not the usual thing. Usually I kind of just pre-record stuff, you know, try to offer some life-altering career advice, but today it's just kind of a little more casual. So anyway, like I said, if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to throw that in the chat. It doesn't have to be about student work or anything in particular. But yeah, I was going to say, you know, I also found a really cool YouTube video recently. Let's see if I can find it. That you ought to check out. It was a really great comparison between different render engines. So by the Blender Guru. So yes, this one right here.
Am I 14?
So basically what Andrew did here is he made this big 2-year project on rendering out different render engines and comparing their speeds. And he did a super awesome stress test using GPU render engines, CPU. He didn't use the XPU render engines that are kind of new to redshift. And I'm not sure if vray has the XPU in his particular tests. But to make a long story short, I'll kind of spoil it for you guys. In terms of speed here, vray took the cake big time. And honestly, it's kind of tempting me to switch over to vray. Redshift is pretty cool. The only thing I don't like about Redshift right now is sometimes the brute force. I mean, I noticed in some of these tests that the brute force GI can take a long time with Redshift compared to vray. So I don't know. I'm kind of tempted to switch on over just for that reason alone. But anyway, yeah, vray. I mean, the only thing about vray though is that one time I tried to install it and I just couldn't. So, you know, maybe that's on me, but I just had the hardest time installing vray once because I was going to switch over to that at one point, but decided not to. But anyway, no life-shaking advice today. Thought I'd just go live out of principle, just to see if you guys had any Q&A and share some work from your fellow artists. But yeah, anyway, that's about it for today. I know not a whole lot exciting there, but I figure why not do something? Okay. We do have a question from GK. Same old question. When can we expect a comprehensive Solaris stuff from you? Well, you know, here's the thing about Solaris. Okay, so Solaris is really kind of designed with Karma in mind, right? The idea is that Karma is this USD render engine, and one of the reasons why I haven't taught Solaris is simply because of Karma. I do realize other render engines can fit inside of there, but even their integration with Solaris is still kind of beta testing, still kind of experimental. So I'd rather teach it when it's more ready, and that's been my thought process behind it, versus trying to teach it right now and basically telling everybody, hey, this stuff isn't ready, you shouldn't use it, you shouldn't do it for production. That's kind of where it's at right now because it is so beta test right now. It's so beta level. But in the future, I do plan on teaching it. It's just a matter of them having some time to work out those bugs. So we'll see what happens with Houdini 19. I do think that Houdini 19 might be releasing fairly soon. And during that time, I'm going to go back over Solaris. I'm going to go back over Karma and all that to see where they're at. And if it's not as buggy, then I'll do a whole series on it, and I'll try to really solidify a lot of that stuff. So there you go. Okay, this one is from Carlos. Hope you're enjoying your time in Mexico. Quick question, do you think you will offer water courses eventually? Yes, I will. I know the course releases have been a little bit slow lately, but right now my general plan is to kind of expand the resource section of CG Forge. Try to make more topics that can kind of go in any direction with Houdini. So that means do a little bit with Pyro, do a little bit with destruction, hair and fur, water. Water is one of those topics that I will be teaching eventually. It's in order to really do water well, though, you have to understand a lot to begin with. It's one of the harder topics in Houdini. So that's why it's taken a while to reach the subject. In addition, I think it's also one of those situations where if you're doing a water sim, a lot of it depends on your hardware. And I just want to let hardware improve a couple notches. Maybe let NVIDIA, increase their VRAM one more time before I hit water, stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of an excuse on that one, but I will be teaching water eventually. It's not going to be for a little while, though, because I'd rather focus on probably hair and fur, a bit more procedural modeling, Solaris stuff, and then I'll try to work my way around to Pyro and Fluid Sims after that. Okay. Let's see. I already did that one. This one is from Geo. What do you think about the new renderman 24? I haven't checked it out yet, truth be told. I think that if XPU is everything that it says it is, then that's great. It's fantastic. Combining the resources of your, CPU and render card is ideal, right? V-Ray actually has a similar thing, and I'm kind of curious how it stacks up to V-Ray. But I'll have to have some time to check it out at some point soon because it's really interesting. Let's see. Arnold in RenderMan 2. Yeah. Well, with Arnold and RenderMan and other render engines, I've been really tempted to branch out of Redshift lately and just include different courses that kind of give you a crash course on Arnold versus renderman versus vray and all that with Houdini. If it's something that you guys really want, let me know. Basically put, there's a ton of topics that I could cover in Houdini, and some of it just depends on what I think you guys would like to see. So yeah, if you want me to cover Arnold or renderman or vray, any of that stuff, I'm totally open to it. Right now, Redshift for me takes care of the vast majority of what I enjoy in a render engine. It's fairly simple to use. I like that fact. I like how renderman or how Redshift just kind of makes it easy for you guys. Because see, one of the things here is that you have to think about what sort of situation you're going to be using these render engines with. Are you going to be using render engines with a studio? Are you going to be using render engines just for your own personal work? One thing I will say about renderman is that it is an engine designed for a studio, which means that generally speaking, it's not as user-friendly as Redshift might be. It doesn't have those built-in post-effects tools, last I checked, that you might have with Redshift and things like that. And so for most of you guys and most of your projects that maybe it's just a freelancer project or doesn't have to be reliant on a full-blown pipeline, a full-blown studio, I go for simplicity and speed. And that's the niche that Redshift tries to take on for itself. So they're all legit. I mean, one of the cool things about render engines too is that if you start with an easy render engine, you learn that, and then you eventually transfer that over to other render engines, most of your knowledge will stay intact. GI doesn't change. Brute force doesn't change. Iridescence caching, the technology behind all of this remains fairly consistent. And so, anyway, so that kind of makes this like argument of if you start with the thing that's user-friendly for learning and then you hop over to a different render engine that might have more bells and whistles, you're less likely to get overwhelmed in the process. So anyway, that's kind of my thinking on why I've picked Redshift for all of my tutorials. Okay. So yeah, a lot of studios don't use Redshift, mostly renderman or Arnold. It's true. I mean, kind of like I was just saying, some of that has to do with just the fact that there's other pipeline tools and scripts available for these things. Some of it has to do with just the visual quality of like subsurface scattering. Volumetrics is a big sore spot for Redshift, so that's true. But like I said, if you start with one render engine that's easier to learn, easier to use, and then you switch over, you're going to have a much better time. I'm trying to think. I think my first render engine that I used was Arnold, actually. I used Arnold and Maya originally. And it wasn't so bad. I think Arnold has some decent documentation on that. But yeah, like I said, these days, I think just when it comes to speed, affordability, I know not everybody has a lot of money to spend on a workstation. And so if that's the case, getting a good graphics card is the best bang for your buck. But anyway, yeah, that's just kind of why I use Redshift. Okay, do you think schools would consider shifting from vray to Redshift? Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, here's the thing about render engines. I know a lot of folks get hung up on this render engine versus the other, but really at the end of the day, they're all pretty dang similar. I mean, for me to switch to any render engine right now would take maybe a week, maybe it'd be a couple days of skimming through their documentation. Honestly, just because it doesn't really matter which one you start with, so long as you learn the concepts behind the render engine, and then you could take it to whatever you need in a given situation. So, yeah, I guess if this wrangle had any common theme, it would be start with just learning about render engines, learning about brute force, learning about any of this stuff. And then, you know, just kind of switch over from there. So let's see. So yeah, Arnold can have good compatibility between different packages. And also, while we're kind of at that topic, let me tell you what I think about that. A lot of times folks try to take, you know, in Arnold, it's your AS file, or in Redshift, it would be your, I think it's like an RS scene file. I forget exactly the extension. But every application has the file that has all the render commands that you can send from, let's say, Houdini to Maya, or Houdini to Cinema 4D. And then you can render with Redshift, you can render with Arnold, what have you. So that compatibility, if you're at a studio and they want you to do stuff in Houdini, bring it over to Maya, make stuff in Maya, bring it over to Houdini, go into these different packages. Honestly, I think it's just easier to render in whatever package you make stuff and then put it all together in comp. So that ability for one render engine to work nicely in one app, going over to the other, is kind of, in my opinion, not a huge factor. Just because of the fact, again, you can just render out specific elements of whatever you want to build out the scene. If I need just, let's say, a pyro effect coming from Houdini, instead of taking that, let's say, Arnold AS file and bringing it into Maya and trying to render that in Maya, I can just render that out as a single element in most situations, and then that can layer on top of everything else. I guess you might lose out on some GI and some things like that when you do that, but I don't know. It's just the way I see it. There's, in most situations, you can at least get away with keeping in the app that you make stuff and then just letting compositing blend everything in nicely in most situations. So even if Arnold does work nicely from one package to the other, I think a lot of it just has to do with people, I don't know, just trying to sell you Arnold. It's just not a big factor in my book, honestly. What do I think about 3D Delights? Worth to try? I'm impressed with the results. Depends on the application. I mean, I think depends on what you're trying to do. I personally haven't looked at 3D Delight a whole lot, but anytime I'm looking at an app and I'm trying to think, hey, you know, is this a cool app? The question is, for what? For making motion graphics? Then yeah, Cinema 4D. For making hair and cloth and fire simulations? Yeah, Houdini. For modeling? Maybe it's Modo. In my personal opinion, I think it's easier to learn the tool that's designed for the job. So, and then just bring all the pieces together, you know? So if there's something in 3D Delight that there's a task that you really like, then maybe that's great. One of the reasons why I went with Houdini and why I switched from Maya in the first place is I was thinking about tasks that I personally thought were the hardest tasks in a pipeline, which would be your effects, your fire, your hair, your simulation stuff. And I wanted to learn the software that did the hard stuff in the easiest way possible. The thought being that if I can pick the tool that's best to do the hard stuff, then I can leverage that better. I don't know. That's kind of the thought I have. It's easier to learn a software that's designed for a specific task than not. So yeah, sorry that's not an exact answer for you there, Carlos. But yeah, 3D Delight, if you like it, try it out. Doesn't hurt to play around for a week or two, see what it does, and go from there. Okay. Well, I think that might do it for right now. By the way, if you guys do have any work you'd like me to share, especially if it's related to CG Forge, I'd be happy to do so. I really love it when you guys, show me the different stuff you're up to. And I love supporting you if I can as well, and sharing it with the rest of the world. Okay. One more question here. What is your advice to somebody who just graduated? Well, I have a lot of advice for people who just graduated. I would recommend, let me think about this for a second. So in general, if you just graduated and you want to find work, you want to find a job, don't go to the place that everyone else who's a junior is trying to find jobs. Don't go to LA. Don't go to the big cities right away. In my opinion, you're better off finding a mid-sized city, somewhere where maybe the population's around 1 million people, finding local studios, finding your overlooked studios, your small to mid-sized studios, and trying to get a job over there. Because here's the deal, mid-sized studios, small studios, they're going to give you a better deal than the large studios, in my opinion. Large studios will give you a nice resume that you can use to shop around. But your chances of getting a job at the large studios is kind of slim. The odds of you getting a job at a large studio that has decent pay for where you live is even more slim. Mid-sized studios and more affordable cities offer a more sustainable route, and I think that you can make a bigger difference. They give you more responsibility at those small studios. I think that helps you grow more. What I did when I went to Nashville, as an example, is I thought, okay, Nashville's a great mid-sized city. There's a lot of growth. There's a lot of cool things happening over there. So I showed up in Nashville. I was crashing on my buddy's couch at the time when I was figuring out a place to live. And I looked up all the small mid-sized studios that maybe people have never heard about. I sent them all a message about who I was. I basically said, hey, I'm here in town. Here's my skill set. I'd love to help you with any projects if there's a way. And if you want to get lunch sometime, I'm happy to buy you lunch or stop by the studio to introduce myself to you guys. And that works pretty well. At the end of the day, we're trying to cultivate those win-win situations. So if you can do that with a mid-sized studio at a place that isn't flooded with tons of juniors, I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. So that's my general advice. That's what worked for me. And it's, yeah. Also, I would say that if you just graduated, a lot of people stop once they graduate. If you don't find a job right away, it's perfectly normal. It's perfectly okay. Find a different job to kind of get you by for now. Keep developing a portfolio. Be specific in something. And then you can go ahead and have something to sell to local studios and get in the game. It's hard at first. It's really not easy, but that's what I would do. Okay. Yeah. Well, and then also hit up GK. Maybe he can hook you up too. Who knows? That'd be great. All right, guys. Well, I think that about does it for today. I really like these kind of open-ended Q&As. If you guys like this too, then let me know, because you know, I've been kind of thinking, like, with the weekly wrangles, it's good to have formal advice, like presentations, like I've been doing every week, and I want to keep doing that because I think it's a cool resource. But I'd also like to mix in maybe some of this more casual stuff. Get to hang out with you guys, get to talk more, maybe go over some other things that are happening in the industry, things that I find that are cool that week, whatever. So if you have ideas on that, let me know. Any feedback on courses you'd like to see, I'm also open ears to that. And that about does it. So thank you guys for tuning in. I hope that you have a great week. And until next time, take care.